Go! Go, go, go!
And we are live. We want to say good morning, everybody,
Good morning.
on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. So we just want to say welcome to the world. And I'm really excited to have a really special guest today. Today we have Mr. The one and only Gary Montalvo. Welcome.
Woohoo!
So a lot of you guys asking, what are you guys actually doing? And so let me start us out here. So a few weeks ago, Gary and I did a podcast together. And I really connected with Gary, and I said, Gary, we need to bring more out to the world with what you're doing, what I do. And it was really simple for us because we talked about, let's be honest, most founders, entrepreneurs, business owners are glorified employees in their own business. And as Gary said this to me, I said, we need to do everything we can to help those people. But reality is, even though they're glorified employees, they don't know what's going on and who they are. And you do this a few different ways. And we said, hey, let's build something together, which is not a brand. Because what we want to do here is be honestly, we want to have a session which escape the hatch. And that's really what this is all about. And before we get going, I want my audience to get to know the one and only Gary Montalvo. So give everybody the little cliff note on who you are.
Sure. My name is Gary Montalvo. I am a leadership and business coach, a speaker. I host my own podcast, The Ownership Game. For the last almost 20 years, I've been working with heart-centered entrepreneurs to support them in bringing leadership into the areas of their business that they might be avoiding, right? And so when people think leadership, very often we think of leading other people outside of us. We think of teams. But the type of leadership that I focus on is your self-leadership. Most entrepreneurs, most founders, we start a business because we have a passion, we have an idea, we have a talent, we have a skill. And then we say, hey, I'm going to launch a business promoting this thing that I love doing. And you get in the game and then you realize, I'm like, oh, making cupcakes is only like 10% of my business. Like I actually have to market and sell and talk and deal with money and manage a team. And there's all these things that quite frankly, we're not really trained for. We're not like educated on it formally. And so human beings, we avoid. we come up with defense mechanisms. We do things to weasel ourselves out of like dealing with the stuff that we need to deal with. And in business, that's dangerous, right? So I really work with people to bring leadership, self-leadership to those areas so that they are empowered and facing them and growing and making the legacy they want to make. At the end of the day, that's what it's about.
And I hope our listeners know exactly why I fell in love with him, because I couldn't have said this better myself. And especially in the hospitality industry, we see this all the time. And I honestly believe 80% of the restaurants which fail today don't fail because they don't have amazing food. They fail because the chefs or the person starting the restaurant, they were never really taught what goes with it. And to what Gary just said, hey, I'm making cupcakes, but this is only 10% of my time. And so what we need to do more is have people understand what goes with it, not just what goes with it on the stuff I'm not good at, the stuff I don't want to do. And then also you need to realize that you need to hire yourself amazing people which are really good at and what you're not. And Gary, you talk a lot about the ownership trap, let's call it that way. Can you talk to our audience a little bit? What is the ownership trap? When you talk about the ownership trap, what are you actually referring to?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that happen when you are trying to, push your business,
Mm-hmm.
through the foundation phase. Mostly at this point, you're throwing spaghetti on the wall, right? 80% of what you're trying isn't really working. You're just trying to figure this out, figure out your, the formulate the ideas that are going to make this business successful. And so you get really focused on action. You get really focused on doing things. You get really focused on, and you need to, because that, part of what makes you successful in this phase is failing fast, right? You wanna 80% is not working, but you wanna move through that 80% really quickly, learn what you need to learn, implement it, and
Mm-hmm.
keep it going, right?
Yep.
Where people get in trouble here is when they start getting emotional about all the failures, right? They start to go, "Oh, I suck," or "What does this mean about me?" or "I'm a horrible person," all that kind of stuff. Here, you want to move fast, but what happens is you get stuck in this like pattern of moving fast and putting out constant fires. When you're doing that, you're in reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're in reaction, you are not creating, you're not envisioning, you're not like taking the time to reflect, you're not taking the time to think through some of the things that you need to think through in order to get you through the long stretch.
Yep.
So one of the ways that that starts to happen is that you become the information center for everything, and everybody starts to come to you for all the information and all the okays and yes, no, yep, I did not do it this way, nope, do it this way. Again, we need to move fast. But what starts to happen is you start to train your team to not think for themselves. You start to train your team to not take risk and to not solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to be the one that is holding all of that for people. And so eventually, when the team is small, when it's just two or three people, when everybody's on the floor in the warehouse sending out orders, this is fine because it's, you can do this. The moment we start to get some momentum and we start to expand and we start to grow, well, now you become a bottleneck because there's only so much you can do in a 24-hour time period. There's only so much information you can hold. There's only so much information you can process. And so you now start to become the bottleneck, and for people, you start to slow your teams down. You start to need They're waiting for you to get the information. So now people are on hold, people can't move without you, you're trying to figure it out, and so it can become a real challenge to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing that tends to happen is that sometimes we become really successful this way, right? This crazy chaotic system, we have this success, it worked, so now we're like, well, this worked,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you've heard the phrase, what got you here is not going to get you there. So, yes, that might have gotten you to this point, but now how do you leverage and scale yourself? How do you create more capacity? In order for you to create more capacity, you have to have more strategists on the team. You have to have more leaders on the team. You have to have other people that can bring you solutions. And in many cases, people that can bring you solutions that are better at bringing you the solutions, that are more qualified. They need to understand what you need them to do. They need to understand the brand. They need to understand your vision and all those things. But when they do, they can actually even do that part of the job better than you. It's really hard to get to that point when you're always the one that's holding things and putting fires. I think one of my clients right now, it's, they're a very successful software company, and I'm not gonna give details because I don't want to expose anything. But so now they're launching in the US, and so they've hired someone to launch the US market because they realize, okay, we need someone over there. But what happens is all the founders and all the team leaders are stuck in this old paradigm of putting out fires, of working in reaction, of not having clarity between roles.
Yeah.
So now they've put this person in charge and they say, here. But she's now having to navigate all of that and figure out, well, you just put me in charge of that, but this person just said do this because that's how they've always done it. And they don't have a clear job description, and they're not really understanding that now the roles are changing and we're transitioning and you can't work in the old ways. So now everybody's stuck in this old paradigm that they need to shift from in order to empower the new people that they're bringing in.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
they'll bring in new people, but then they want the old people to work within the old chaos, right? And it's like, no, it doesn't work. Everybody has to now start to shift and create a new way of operating, and
It,
that requires space. Go
it's,
ahead.
it's it's not only that. You make it sound so simple. And first off, I want our listeners to check out your business because you're really good in working with people and kind of cut through that mess. But you always talk about escaping the hatch. When you talk about escaping the hatch, or let's make it simpler. How about you give our audience one or two things they can do today to see a different tomorrow?
Yeah. So one thing that I see very often is you build the org chart around the fires that you have right now.
Mm-hmm.
You build your org chart around the problems that you're facing in the moment. And so when you do that, what are you empowering? You're empowering the problems. You're empowering the current chaos. You've got to create the org chart for where you want to be in 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where do you want to be in 3 years? And yeah, there's going to be gaps. You may not be able to fill in. You may not be able to hire some of those key people right now. You may not have the resources or the time and all that. But then you want to start working backwards to, okay, this what's the team that I need right now to get me to that? And what's the structure that I need right now to get me to that? Because when you only organize around the fires, then that's what you are promoting. You're not promoting the growth, you're promoting the day-to-day emergencies, the day-to-day reactions. And
Mm-hmm.
that work is not the same work as the growth work. The growth work requires innovation, it requires space, it requires planning, it requires accountability. And then the day-to-day fires, that's the work that you need to keep the wheels and the grease moving. It's two different types of work. So that's one thing that I would do. The other thing that I see founders and leaders miss the mark on, they'll create these beautiful plans for growth and sales. They'll know what their sales numbers and where they want to be with things, but they don't do the work of planning the people.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want your people to be in 3 months? Where do you want your people to be in 6 months? Where do you want your people to be in 2 years? What are the leadership skills that need to be in place with your team in order for you to be able to be at 2, 5, whatever millions your goal is? You've got to do that thinking. You've got to plan that out, and then you've got to come up with something to support that growth,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it doesn't have to be complicated. It could be, hey, I'm going to meet with this person weekly to just work on their leadership. Or I'm going to work with this person once a month and check in on these measures. It doesn't have to be really complicated, but if you don't do the work of investing in the development of your people, then again, you're not going to have the resources you need to sustain this vision of the business.
I love that. So, um, if people want to know more about that, how can they get? Because one of the things you talked about is you will give anybody who comes in from this little August episode a half hour, 45-minute free evaluation. How can people get a hold of you to know where they fall within the categories, where they are their own biggest hang up, and how can they learn more and get into a little bit more of what you actually teach?
Yeah, so I mean, the easiest way is just reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Gary, just Gary at GaryMontalvo.com. Just the easiest way to find me. I'd love to. And by the way, I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, like if you wanna ask me a question and bounce around ideas of my head. I love having those conversations. I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, you're gonna have to, pay me for my time. Like, I mean, I want you to pay me for my time, but I also am very generous. If you have a question and you just want to bounce, an idea, or like, please reach out, have a combo. Let's
I
talk.
love that. And then
Um,
also to our listeners, if you write playbook on the comments below, Gary and I worked on a little playbook where we actually gonna send you a document where you can do your own evaluation on and have some other fun with, which kind of gives you a little bit of behind the scenes. But I encourage you guys need to look at what Gary does and get to know him, because if you get to know him, you're gonna fall in love with him the way I do. Because like I said, he's good looking and it's upsetting. I try to set this up for 3 days. He shows up and he's so much better looking than me.
Shut up. Oh my goodness.
And then, hashtag we all hate Gary. But you spot on. And I honestly feel for any of our audience which sick of burning out, which sick of bleeding out, you guys got to talk to Gary. He's amazingly good at it.
Thank
So,
you.
Gary, let's switch a little bit. So, we talk a lot about this is the behind the scenes and the mindsets of the owner. We also talk a lot about the authority gap. There is I call it a surefire way of people become experts overnight. And we talk a lot about this, and people which follow my work know I'm a big believer that everybody in the world needs to write a book.
Yeah.
And we have developed this simple process where in 8 weeks we can get you from no idea to a published author. Because I honestly feel if you write whatever you're passionate about, write whatever you had to overcome. So after you talk to Gary, and all of the things he does and the things you learn about yourself, you need to write a book. Because for me, a book is the single best way to get a foot in the door. A book is the single best way to make you an authority overnight. A book is the single best way to have conversation with people you normally wouldn't have access to. And we talk about this a lot. We doing podcasts. I do one. Gary does one. But with our book course, I met some amazing human beings. I met people which make multiple six figures we work with. And all of them, if you kind of narrow it down, they all have the same desire with the book. The book is for them a tool for them to get their audience or the people which know about them to kind of learn more about them. And they teaching in their books. So what I love about that is because when we start working with these individuals, seeing the first book and seeing what they're actually publishing, it's absolutely amazing on what they have learned about themselves. Because for me, Gary, you and I talk about this all the time. A book, it's just not the simple best way to get your information out there. We all agree on that. But the coolest thing about writing a book is who you're becoming in writing the book. Because as you write the book, you will learn so many things about yourself that if you like shortcuts, you will never get a book done. If you're all over the place, you will never get a book done. If you're not clear, you will never get a book done. So if you write a book, and let's say Gary, I think Gary, you need to write a book. So if Gary would write a book, and when Gary talks about what he does in the book, because a book is a certain finite way or a finite time you get in front of in front of your audience. So now you need to be very concise and very to the point. So Gary will learn on all of the things he needs to become better in communicating, because the way you communicate on a book is not the way you go on a public speech, or if you go out there and do something else. So for me, the number one thing about the book is it makes you really good talking about the things you can help people on. The second thing is when you do this, and The reason I'm talking about this because I went through this. Is I wrote my first book, which was called For the Love of Austria. Gary, I don't know if I ever told you the story.
Mm.
I was sitting 4 o'clock in the morning. My wife comes and said, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm just, it says I'm out of margin. I don't know what it means. And she kept saying, "You need to hire somebody." And then I hired this guy. And 15 minutes into it, he fixed the bug. And I said, "How the heck did you know that?" I said, "Oh, it happens all the time." It's one of the really simple things. So having somebody who helps you with that is hugely beneficial. So, but for me, I learned a lot about to get really clear of what you do. The second thing is what I loved about is it made me not just a better communicator, it made me overall a better human being because the way I communicate today is totally different than I did pre-book. And then also what a book does, it has that little thing. You probably heard it said, there is the most etiquette or whatever you want to call a place where are the most people which have the most or the greatest ideas, and it's the cemetery because that's where books never written, stories never told, and movies never made. So for me, what a book does, so more than anything else, it we actually going through this with one of our authors right now. She edited this book for the last 4 months. And I said, you know what? When you're in your head, you're dead. And you can edit this book forever, or you never start on the book because I think the universe has great ways of making you realize if you're really serious about that. But there is that point, Gary. And I always said when we have about an 8 weeks course, and it's usually between week 5 and 7, where people feel like I'm behind. I need to do all of that. And then, Gary, why am I writing about it? Gary knows so much more about this than I do. How dare people just gonna pick me apart? And then people kind of give up on the book because they never publish it. And for us, we always say people need us in 3 different ways. Number one is get them to get really clear what is the book for. The second thing is we need to help them to keep writing because the universe has ways of kind of holding you back. And the final thing is to get the book out there. Because if you don't get the book out there, nobody is going to know all the amazing things you have to teach, all of the amazing stories you have to tell. We're working currently with a senior master sergeant from the military, and his book is going to be absolutely amazing. And he wants to build a speaking business and everything around it. So for me, that's the benefit of a book. And you can do this really easy today, and you can have a book in 8 weeks. So if you start now, you have a finished book at Halloween. And so for me, Gary, if you're asking me, hey, what is the best way of getting your information out there? I would say it's a book because it does so many things. How do you feel about a book, Gary?
I love what you're saying for two significant reasons. First is this idea that because one of the things that can happen to founders is that they get stuck in the weeds of the business, as we just talked about. And so part of what you need to do is pull yourself out and be able to have a high view so that you can look into the future, right?
Mhm.
And so building a profile, building a brand that is will support the growth of your business. It'll give your company more exposure. It'll pull you from the weeds of the everyday to thinking far ahead. And so now when you have something like that, well, you can be on panels, you can be on podcasts, you can be on conversations, you can
Yeah.
be, you can start to build a public profile, which will only help the growth of your business in a different way. It's a different type of marketing that I think is very powerful. And I love, because I was thinking this, you literally just took the thoughts from my head. There's a personal development that happens when you engage in a process
Mhm.
like this. It forces you to articulate a lot of things. It forces you to sit down and think about what matters, what are the lessons that you have learned. Are you in alignment with the lessons that you have learned? And that is an extremely powerful process. So it's
Yeah.
almost like you have to self coach
That's a
to,
great way of putting it. Yeah.
you have to go through a coaching process in order to be able to produce something like that. And I think it's I think so. I think what you just shared is really, really powerful, from a
Mhm.
leadership development perspective.
Thank you. And I honestly feel, and you know, we have this internal goal where we want to help 1 million people over the next 10 years to tell a story. Because if you struggle with something, and that's why I wanted to reach out and talk to Gary with his generous offer and doing that hour of intake, um, because you will learn three things. Number one, you will learn that when Gary talks about this, it has two things, and that's why I fell in love with you. When Gary talks about it, it's not because he learned about it or he read about it or he's seen it. He actually went through it. Number one, I love to hear about it. Okay. The second thing is you will realize is he has that innate ability of breaking it down and make it sound so easy. And every time I talk to you, I was like, oh, that's easy. I can do this. And then I start doing it, and I was like, shit, I need to call Gary. And then finally, I think what you are innately good at is what's coming next. And for me, I think that's one of the biggest, positive things I see about you, because you have that innate ability of saying, hey, we just did this. If you want to go there, this is the road you need to take. This is what you need to do. And there's very few people out there which do this as easy, as innately as the way you do it. And for me, what I absolutely love about that is there's, no pressure. And for me, I'm telling you, if you guys are not working with Gary, I think he's silly. He's amazing and good in what he does. But
You're hired. You're gonna be in my PR team from now on. Thank
no,
you, brother. I
you
appreciate
know,
that.
and that's for me the greatest thing about you. And for me, that's why I'm saying everybody needs to work with you. So I want to pivot a little bit, because you
Yeah.
constantly talk about every founder, every entrepreneur must do a few things in 2025. And you talk about systematizing your work. Can you talk to us a little bit what you mean by systematizing your work?
Yeah, so it again, you get stuck in these patterns of reactions, and so when you're putting out fires, you're not really thinking about process. You're thinking about, how do I get this fire away? How do I handle
Mhm.
this problem? And so you're not really building it in a way that everybody knows what to do next time.
Yeah.
And so you want to start to, and again, I know it's hard because you got to stop what you're doing, you got to put the things down, but you want to start to document what's the process for doing something. Every
Hmm.
time you solve a problem, don't just solve it. Now, actually write out,
I
this
love
is
that.
what you do when this happens. And there's so many tools now with AI and other tools that really allow you to do this well, and even will create videos. And but if you take the time to solve the problem and document it, then next time that happens, you don't have to explain it to people. You can just say, hey, go to that folder. It's called this. You start to train other people to now be able to handle these problems on their own. And that is going to be key if you need to scale. Like, you need to
Mhm.
be able to have, because here's the other thing that happens is, when we start delegating, we can get frustrated because what we get back isn't what we want, isn't how we
So true.
wanted it, right? And it could be as silly as, the font is wrong in the document, right? I like, when I do this, I like to color code it this way, right? Or I like, and it's valid. If that's how you want it, that's how you want it. If that's what you think works, then that's what you think works. But you have to go through a process where you train people in how to execute that, and you have to document what that is, because you can't just push something off to somebody and say, here, do this,
Hmm.
right? And expect it to get back. My system is always, okay, the first time we'll do it together, right? The second, I'll show you and you watch me. The second time, you will do it and I will watch you. The third time, you will do it, and then you bring it to me, and I'll check your work, right? And then after that, you're on your own,
Hmm.
right? That's not a that it, some of these may be like, a week of following me. I'm not saying that it's like one time and you're done, but you get the point. That is, phase one is they shadow you.
Yeah.
Phase two, they're executing and you are observing. And phase three, they're executing but you're checking the work. If you
Hmm.
don't go, but then even that's your system for training somebody, right? I just showed you a system for training somebody. That's You need to have a system for that as well,
Yeah.
right? So if you don't do this work, it's just going to be really hard for you to be able to scale. And I know it's easier said than done, but here's the thing: this is one of those things that everybody knows, but they don't do well because they're
Hmm.
focused on the emergency, they're focused on the fire. So when you have somebody like me checking up on you that it's getting done, forcing you to implement these systems and these structures. So if it really is valuable to have an outside person kind of making sure that you're implementing this stuff.
Yeah, I love that, and you kind of brought it up because one of the things we were saying, there's three things I think you need to do in 2025, and the second one is that you need to have a brand platform.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm a good example of that. I always thought,
Yeah.
hey, I'm selectively famous. People in the culinary industry know who I am. They know the impact I made and all of the great things. They just will come to you. And I also feel, if you are founder without a voice, you will always stay behind the scenes. And for me, that was one of the hardest things because I thought I built it, people will come. And you and I talk about this a lot, but it's time for founders and real entrepreneurs to step into the spotlight. And you
Yeah.
do this by building your own platform. And what we have learned, and maybe I share this, what we have learned is we did all of these platforms. And I have this amazing marketing person. She came to me and she said, hey, let's do three. It's the best decision we ever made. So there's three we're doing, and that's what we're currently on. And we want to provide value to our listeners, to our audience, because building that brand, listen, intellectually, I always knew about it. I always heard it. I just didn't know how to do it. And for me, the reason we're doing the book, because the book is the first step in creating the platform, and then we can help you build everything else around it. And
Question:
then,
What do you? What I have a question I want to ask you.
yeah,
How do you like? What advice do you have for people where the thought of what you just said is like, I don't want anything to do with that. Like, I just want to keep working on my code or cooking my food or doing like I don't want to do any of that. Like,
yeah,
right? Like what?
that's so true. Because it, listen, the whole idea of a platform, things are changing so fast. It's evolving so fast. And whatever we did 3 weeks ago, it doesn't go today. So I'm telling you what you need to do is what I did. You hire yourself somebody who can help you with that and let them do
Mhm.
it. Because for them, they innately good at it. And for me, one of the things as I hired my marketing person, I said to her, I give you no instructions because if I tell you what to do, we will have what we always had. I want you to build it. And
Mhm.
I encourage anybody to do the same. Um, Sometimes it's easier to bring somebody on, even if you need part time, or bring them on as you have a project basis. But you need somebody to help you with that, and that's when you get our playbook. We're talking about this throughout because for me, there's so many things Gary is so good at. Why would I learn it on my own? I can learn it on my own, but it will take forever for me to get there. I can make a phone
Yeah.
call 20 minutes later. Gary tells me what to do 3 weeks later, see an impact. So I think that's with all of that. And it's the same thing with a platform. Partner with somebody who has done it and who you can deal with and work with on a constant basis. And for me, that's the best decision I made is bringing somebody on to help me with that.
Yeah. I love that. And what I would add to that also is I think people, when people get frustrated about stuff like that, it's typically because they're being either they're forcing themselves or they're being forced to somehow do it in a way that's not authentic for them.
Yeah, true.
And I think,
Mhm.
and to your point of writing the book and doing that work, part of that is finding your authentic expression of how you want to build your brand, how you want to do social media, how you want to create content, how you want to write the book. Like there is some work that you have to do in order to find your authentic expression of that. And
Yeah,
when you do that, it creates a lot of freedom. It creates a great deal of freedom for you. So that's the part that I would add to that. And I think that the what I also love about what you said is that it really starts to point to this idea of not stopping to sell your time.
hmm,
I think that when entrepreneurs, and I get it, like you're short on resources, you don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of time. So one of the ways that we shortchange that is we try to do things ourselves, right? So I'm gonna write a book. Okay, and now we have these beautiful things called, AI models that like make us invincible, right? So now I'm gonna sit here and talk to Chad about how to write a book, and I'm gonna blah 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 blah. Blah. Meanwhile, you literally have a proven process that will create a published book in 8 weeks.
yeah. I,
Yes, you could go and save money and try to do it and do and learn the lessons. And I'm gonna come back 2 years later, and you're still gonna be working on your book,
yeah,
because that's how that goes. So there is a way that we have to start to understand that leveraging other people's expertise is part of the what lets you skip the line.
yeah. I listen. I absolutely love that. And to our listeners, I think this stuff is so good. What you just talking. Let's make this point number 3. We have point number 1, which was systematize what works. And the second one was we need to create a platform. And I think you said it earlier. Let's make point number 3: stop selling your time, because when you as you just spoke for me, I was like, oh, I did that. Then you said something else. Oh shit, I did that too. And then you talked about something. Oh, I did that
We've
too.
all done it, 100%. And now with all these tools, it's so easy to go down that rabbit hole. Like I'll give you a perfect example. Like someone told me they're starting a podcast and they're learning how to edit. And my first question was, why? Why would you ever do that? Are you like, no, no, it takes like 6, 7 hours of work to produce one podcast episode. Why would you do that? You know how many sales calls and how many business you can
Oh my
close during
god.
that time? No.
So for me, everybody came and said, "Oh, you need to do a podcast." Okay, I was like, "Okay, this is great. Let's do a podcast." And as we started doing it, I was like, "Crap, that's a lot of work."
So much
And
work.
and now when I sit here, we have 3 full-time people working on that. Somebody's editing and putting the stuff out there. We have somebody posting it. We have somebody writing us to the people we want to bring in, and then coordinating with people on, hey, does this time work for you? Does this work for you? Just all of the stuff which goes in, nobody tells you that. And for me, literally, we have 3 full-time people doing the podcast now, and we have a little bit over 200 episodes. But for me, it's hard to do it on your own. Can you imagine doing all of that on your own, Gary?
No. The moment I knew I was doing a podcast, that was never in my consideration. I knew that I was only doing that with help, with an editor and with like an assistant to do the logistics stuff. Like it was not even because it, and guys, here's the thing that I want to say. Like I'm a former designer. So I'm a like that was my first career. So I'm really good at tech. I'm really good at using the softwares. I enjoy learning stuff. I enjoy going down rabbit holes and learning how to do things like editing. It's a beautiful distraction from the things that are really going to grow the business. So we have to be really careful, especially
Mhm.
now in this world of where content is king and there's so much pressure to just be putting out so much content all the time. That's a perfect way that we can really go down a rabbit hole. But it's not just content. There's all these ways in your business that there are things that if you delegate it, that if you worked out from the beginning, like your plan, your business plan should from the very beginning have how are you replacing yourself? What's the strategy for you to exit? And it doesn't mean like you're gone. It just means like you're not the one baking the cupcakes anymore.
Yeah, I love that. And let me add a little caveat what I have learned, Gary. If you try to create something, it usually takes twice as long as you thought it would take. And
Mhm.
then it cost you at least twice as much as you budgeted for. And I always thought I was really good in budgeting, you know? And that's the hardest thing, I think, overall in the business. And you and I talk about this all the time. The end of the day, what saved me and our business is being around people I trust. And you and I talk this about this a lot. It's there. I honestly feel, and we actually started this about a year ago at our podcast. I said, and by the way, if any of our people listening to, I ignore that. But so what we did when we did the podcast, we put our guests in a 1 to 3. One was, okay, I need to find a way to learn from them, partner with them, or collaborate with them. Two was, let's get deep in with them and see what they're actually doing. Let's follow them. We call it ethical stalking. We need a better name. And then see if we can move them to 1. And then there's 3 where we know the message is powerful. They're really good. But I know they're not there to partner with us. And so we kind of took our audience and we put them into 1 to 3. And Carrie, you were always a 1. I know you wondering. You were always a 1. And, but for me, it was the single best way we did, because now I go back and they're saying, oh, we just interviewed an NFL star. We just interviewed somebody who made 28 million, and we just had a $250 million company. If you would have told me that a year ago, as I started this podcast, or 2 years ago as we started this, I was, no, I want to talk about food. But I was like, the guy I just spoke to has some amazing things. And if the people in the food industry only do one of those things he talked about, they will have a total different outcome of their life.
Yeah.
So we all need somebody who sees in us what we don't see in ourselves. And that's my point with that. And if you want to call it a mentor, or if you call it a business coach, I really don't care what you call it, but everybody needs somebody.
Yeah. Or you can do it the long way.
Yeah, there is this thing called GOOGLE. You can learn anything, but and for me,
Mm.
I to any of our listeners which know me, I was like, oh, I do this myself. I just work longer. And there was a time I came into the office at 7 in the morning and I left at midnight, 6 days a week. And, I had a little bit of health scare. And for me, I was like, what can I do differently to have the same outcome? So we repivot who we are as an organization. We looked at how can we support the people we absolutely love, and then who can we partner with? And that's my big thing. We all need somebody who sees in us what we don't see in ourselves.
Yeah. No, I mean, your story is so common. It happens to so many people that do this. And it's easy to get there, I think, because we love what we do.
Mm-hmm.
There's a real joy in the building of something. There's a real joy in pouring yourself completely into something. And it's hard to wake up and realize, oh, shoot, like I'm not spending time with my family. I'm not taking care of myself. I haven't been to a doctor in 3 years. I haven't, and then you have to, get to work at putting back integrity in the other areas of your life. But if you do this work that we're asking you to do from the very
Yeah.
beginning, as soon as possible, then you don't get to that point, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the value of that you don't get to a point where you're like things are just broken. You get to you start implementing those things early so that you can leverage those things early
I,
on.
I love that. I think if there was one thing I learned, which is, hey, you don't need to hustle more. You need a roadmap and you need a reputation.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we talking about today. And if you serious about scaling, I think there's very few other options. So for me, roadmap and reputation are the two things.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I want to quick leave with one thing, and
Okay.
that's something you said to me. I wrote down super super powerful. You said to me, "Hey Christian, founders who systemize win. Period. There's no other." And I couldn't agree with you more. That's so powerful as you talked about this, and for me, I think that's why we're doing this little series here in August. And we're going to be on 10 a.m. every Monday morning. So this is one of four. We're going to do four.
Tuesday morning.
Oh, Tuesday. Sorry. I'm still, see, Gary, I still think it's mine. So Tuesday morning, 10 a.m. And we come on. So if you guys make it come in, let us know. And also, if you haven't done so, like us below, share this with a friend. And then also write in playbook and we will send you our playbook. Anything else, Gary?
No, have fun, keep doing the thing, and just get out of reaction. That's number one. If you're in reaction the whole time, your best ideas don't come from that place. We need space
That's
to
very
create.
true.
We need space to create.
I love that, and actually, that brings me a little story, and I don't want to make it too long. A really good friend of mine, um, constantly hustled, constantly worked really, really, really hard, and he said, "Oh, I go on this platform, I learn a little bit, I implement it, I learn, I implement," and I said, "I see some successes," and then he came to me a few weeks later and said, "Hey, Christian, I signed up for this program." And he should stay nameless, but it was quite an expensive program. And then I said to him, "Wow, you join a mastermind, paying $30,000 plus a year?" He said, "I know, but the guy I met, he does exactly what I want to do. And I know he can help me." And, it's less than a year later, he has a total different outlook of life. He has a total different business he did a year ago. And for me, it's one of those things. And I don't know, I don't want to sound, belligerent here, but if you don't invest in your success, you eventually can get there. But what we're talking about is shortening the learning curve. And for me, that's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
Great.
On
So,
that note,
so I want to say thanks everybody for being here, and please write us below. What was a thing or two I said you thought it was absolutely amazing, and what are some of the things Gary said? He said you don't want him to say that again. Okay, so right no, what do you liked on today's episode from what you heard from me and from Gary? And then if you haven't done so, make sure you guys follow Gary on all of his platforms. Make sure you run to his website, sign up for that free masterclass he's going to give you. And with that, I want to say thanks for being here today. Thanks for blogging in. And we see you guys next Tuesday. With that, Gary, thanks for being here. And to our
pleasure,
listeners,
brother.
thanks
See
for
you next
being here,
week.
everybody. See you next Wednesday. Sorry, Tuesday.
Tuesday.